first meeting of the Police, Fire and Rescue Subcommittee. Item 1 on the agenda, appointment of chairman. Can I please ask members to nominate chairman?
Could I nominate Councillor Stephen Thompson, please?
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Stephen Thompson to assume the role of chairman?
Right, well, thanks very much for your nomination there. If we could just, firstly, I'd like to welcome Kate and Neville here in their new position as a respective local police commander and local senior officer. So it's good news, I think. And also, I'd like to welcome Laura. I meant respectively. And if I could also welcome Laura Payton, who's the lead inspector for HM Inspectorate of Constabulary for Scotland, who's come to observe, I believe, just in a fact-finding mission, if you like. Thank you. So we just go straight on to the Sederunt and Apologies. If that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Just got the one apology today. That's from Councillor McCutcheon. Okay, I'll note Councillor Ian as well. Thank you.
And do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, the next item is the Delegations to Police, Fire and Rescue Subcommittee, report by Director, Chief Executive Service, and we're being asked to note the remit of the Police, Fire and Rescue Subcommittee as detailed at 3.3. So if I can hand over to Claire just to speak to this report.
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing really to add. This is a procedural report with the remit already agreed by Council and part taken.
A question from Councillor Ogilvie.
Sorry, old habits die hard. It was just, I mean, it's quite clear in here, but it's the other ad hoc subcommittee that's looking at committee structures. It's going to report, really, to you, Derek. That's in June or is it July? Council.
Thank you. Self-chair, yeah, Councillor Ogilvie's quite right. The ad hoc scheme, this is a full subcommittee. The ad hoc subcommittee is fulfilling its remit with a requirement to come back to Council before the recess. So certainly that's the intention. And clearly, as members are aware, the recommendations previously made by the former Police and Fire Authority have been very much taken on board by the establishment of the subcommittee. Going forward, as you can see in the report presented, consideration is being given to a range of options, but particularly the idea of the wider safe and healthy agenda, and therefore that's very much in the thinking of the ad hoc subcommittee just now.
Thanks for that, Derek, as much as I thought it was. So this could just be an interim set of delegations if we're subsumed or added to whatever is agreed at full council after the other ad hoc subcommittee reports. So in all intents and purposes, this could be an interim set of.
I think the point's well made through you, Chair. Simply, this time it's a full subcommittee, so it's not ad hoc, quite clear about that, but obviously going forward it's in the gift of members at full council at the appropriate time to take a decision on the future delegations and arrangements for police and fire in particular, but as I've said, the wider public protection, community safety agenda, and on that basis there may be a continuation of the subcommittee, or there may be a refreshed subcommittee which would incorporate an enhanced remit or a variant remit. So That's certainly the intention.
Perhaps for clarity, 3.4 refers to the ad hoc subcommittee. Maybe it should add scheme of delegation there, just to make sure that that subcommittee still has to report back. And it shouldn't be confused with this committee. Also in 3.5 there, I've had notification that Richard Wetton, who was going to speak later, was unable to attend today. 0.5 or no. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, Chair. Just on that, obviously Mr. Welton has got other business on this afternoon and couldn't make it here, but just to say that I hope these sort of actions don't continue and that we do get regular visits from the SPA down to this committee as well, to either as observers or advisors to us to give us presentations.
Thank you. I think that's an important thing that you've raised, because obviously this is an important phase in terms of establishing the new engagement across the whole country. So it'd be good to have a kind of feedback from the national advisor. Councillor Ogilvie.
Just on that very point, the SPA is meeting in Lockerbie at the end of the month, and we've all been invited. We can register our interest and attend. So I hope most members on this committee do. I'll be on holiday, unfortunately, but the rest of you can turn up.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, with those minor amendments, then, are we happy to note? Yep. Okay, item number 5 is to basically update the members on the progress made in relation to the Police, Fire and Rescue Service reform and the work completed through the Pathfinder group. I believe Mr. Crichton will be speaking to the report, and I'd also like to invite contributions from Kate Thompson and Neville Wright to the discussions on this, particularly the governance, performance and partnership work stream, if members are happy with that. Just hand over to you, Derek.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, as members know, the background to this report was in fact the decision of last year's Police and Fire and Rescue Committee, authority who established the Pathfinder group, and their key purpose was to oversee the winding down of the Police, Fire and Rescue Authority. I believe paragraph 3.2 in the report sets out the remit of the Pathfinder, which we can see was focused fairly strategically on 3 key activities. Critically maintaining liaison with local senior officers from both the Constabulary and the Fire and Rescue Service, and that was in light of the emerging new organisations and boards. Secondly, it was about contributing to the drafting of the first local police and fire and rescue plans. And finally, it was about bringing forward proposals to the effective decision-making structures in the future. So I think if we look at these 3 strategic objectives, it would be fair to conclude that the Pathfinder group has fulfilled its remit, with the specific, more operational details set out in paragraph 3.4, and the Chair alluded to particularly going forward the governance, performance and partnerships workstream. So in conclusion, I would suggest, Chairman, that we have maintained liaison with the local representatives, who we'll hear from shortly. We've agreed the local plans at full council in March earlier this year, and this subcommittee has been established as the new basis for decision-making post 1st of April. So the recommendations in the report are obviously to acknowledge the conclusion of the winding down, and the Pathfinder has fulfilled its remit. Happy to take them.
Any questions from the floor? Councillor Ogilvie.
It's the last box under 3.4, winding down of the Police and Fire Rescue Authority, which is an overarching thing, but scheduled completion date is the end of November 2013. Just if we accept that it's finished, how do we keep an eye on that part? Who's looking at it? Is it us or is it officers? Or?
No. Chair, happy again. More than happy for there to be a final report to the appropriate committee at this point, this subcommittee, on the basis of it being wound down. But clearly at this point what we're very much dealing with are procedural and legal matters. That's the primary activity tied into the financial position, etc. So very much procedural work, very much in the hands of officers at the present time. and more than happy to give members the assurance that at that point that it's concluded, that the final information on that can be brought to the appropriate committee.
Thank you, Derek. If I take Councillor Davidson first and then Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. It was on a similar vein and with reference to the box above, rights, liabilities and obligations, just to ask where that would be reported to. I think Mr. Crichton might have half answered it, but just for my clarification.
Thank you, Chair. To a large extent, that's actually what the winding down refers to, that we need that piece of work to actually be complete before we can legally confirm the complete wind down. On that basis, a key part of that will in fact be the report due to full council on the unaudited accounts, and therefore on that basis in June members will get a greater sense of some of the issues that have been resolved in that work stream.
Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. It states, reference the police and with the fire services, with both services, the asset and staff transfer. And it does state in the papers that these have been completed and are now completely sorted out. But during the time and through the Pathfinder group, we had some quite in-depth discussions, references, the staff transfers in particular. I mean, I know that speaking to Paul through committee, the asset transfer, the problems that we encountered through that were all sorted out prior to it going through. But with the staff, there was occasions that the Chief Constable was alluding to that some of the staff weren't particularly happy at the time, and there were one or two, maybe the anomalies, whatever they may have been, it might have been personal circumstances, I don't know, but it's just to see maybe the lead officers could update us on that to make sure that all the staff have transferred quite happily and are quite content in the new role now, or are there any outstanding issues to be sorted out through that?
I think if it's okay, I'll take Councillor Nicholl's question if it's relating to the Pathfinder detail, and then maybe invite you to come in and give a general update. Councillor Nicholl.
It was actually in the very same point, but I would also like to know if there's been any reduction in the number of people employed in this particular, especially in the staff side rather than the officer side.
Well, with that, if it's okay, I'll maybe hand over to yourself, Divisional Commander, and let you take it from here.
Thank you. We'll probably deal with the staff one first, and then I'll give a more general update. In answer to Councillor Nicholl's question, the answer is no, we've still got the same number of staff. I think the unhappiness that you talk about is more about the uncertainty about where all the staff will be located in the end, because we have that separation between staff who will be aligned to the SPA and those that will be aligned to Police Scotland. That work is still ongoing, albeit for some assurance the bulk of the staff within Dumfries and Galloway are aligned to Police Scotland at the moment. We are going through and will continue to go through a fairly significant piece of work in terms of, and if I can be quite clinical about it, we have to restructure our business model, and that is the work that's currently ongoing. So just now I still have the police staff with me that I had on day one. However, there is a voluntary redundancy early retirement option that is being pursued. It's open to all staff, and you can imagine for a mixture of reasons people are looking at their own options, and certainly the advice having been round the division in its entirety, you can imagine there's a really mixed bag of reasons why people might choose to take it, or more importantly might choose not to. The concern is what the future holds, and I think the difficulty just now as we try to work through some of those structures to get a real idea of it, is we will not know what the job opportunities will be under the new model. If I can give members reassurance that obviously I'm fundamental to that piece of work, and I'm going to have some discussions next week with colleagues in HR nationally about some of the structures that will begin to be put in place. But you're all very much aware that we do not have an overabundance of staff anyway, and my approach has very much been, if people genuinely want to leave the service, it would be wrong of me not to let them go if they maybe then have an opportunity to seek employment elsewhere, or it's genuinely what they want to do. But what I must do is make sure that there is resilience within the local command area to deliver the service that we have committed to in our police plan. So I've kind of danced around the days because there's no certainties, but be assured this committee will be updated as soon as there is absolute certainty, and what I would probably bring is a lot more clarity once that's available to me. But suffice to say, while staff are considering BR and ER options, there is nobody has left under those circumstances at the moment. Anybody who has chosen to leave, and I don't think there are any, if my memory serves me correctly, have done so because it's their choice and they didn't want to, they had sought other employment anyway.
Thank you, Chair. Just following on from that, and you may not wish to answer this, but has there been any sort of pressure applied by the new Chief Constable on you and on your staffing levels, therefore, to help decrease staffing numbers? Because we were assured at the time that, especially on the officer side, officer numbers wouldn't be decreased. So, you know, if I know you've said that staffing, they haven't taken up the opportunity as yet, but you know, if that occurred and numbers fell, I appreciate it wouldn't be dramatically because that wouldn't be the case. But you know, has there been any sort of pressure applied from above?
There's probably two groups within the police service. There's police officers and police staff. And what I've explained to you in the previous answer was about police staff. There will always be a requirement, and it's not about the Chief Constable bringing that pressure, it's the pressure to meet budgetary requirements. And when you have a national budget, which will be 80 or 89%, I think, is on staff costs, that's where the challenge arises, that we must make those savings. And the way they're trying to do that is through voluntary redundancy, early retirement opportunities for staff. It's proving to be a challenge, as you will appreciate, but there is no pressure being brought to me that says I must do this. What I do have to do is make savings, but what I want to do is do that in very open consultation with my own staff to make sure that the decisions we make, and already I've got people who are saying, I would like to leave because I want to pursue different things. My job is to make sure I can facilitate them leaving without a reduction in the service. So it's almost about separating the post and the people and saying, can I let the people go so that they can pursue what their interests are, but still maintain a public service. So that's probably the area of business that I'm working on just now. So there's no pressure, but there is a requirement to make those savings. But what I'm trying to do is be creative in that to make sure that people who don't want to be part of the service anymore, I allow them to go. And the people who want to maintain that, I try and make sure that we have posts for them and jobs for them here. In terms of police officers, we have not seen a reduction in the number of police officers that are here. We are still getting recruits that are coming here. I do have vacancies, but they're vacancies created out of the new structure because the structure across Scotland has changed. So there's been new areas of business created, for instance, custody division. So there's specialist custody division, whereas before that was integrated into our response policing plan. It is now a separate unit, so you quite rightly have to have specialist people. So we have definitely not seen a reduction in the number of police officers who are on the streets of Dumfries.
Thank you, Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Kate says there's no pressure. If you missed a word out there, it's yet. That will come. Could Kate explain the subtleties of SPA and Police Scotland to me, please? She alluded to them in her talk, and could she also explain to me why there seems to be more traffic police on the road now than there were before the 1st of April?
I don't want to frighten you, Councillor Nicholl, but they're actually under-resourced and I need to put more in, so please be careful. When the bill was created and they were looking at the devolvement of responsibility to the Chief Constable, whereas in Dumfries and Galloway Constabulary, as you would know, the Chief Constable had devolved responsibility for all areas of the police service under his command. And that included from operational policing to finance to HR to all those areas. Under the legislation, and this is where the legislation perhaps created some of the tensions that we saw in the papers prior to the 1st of April, there was different interpretations of what that legislation said. Now, the police, all the chief constables, I'm quite sure, believed that all the existing resources would transfer across to with the responsibility lying with the Chief Constable of Police Scotland, who would be accountable to the Scottish Police Authority. There was a different interpretation put in by the SPA, and the view was that whilst the Chief Constable had responsibility for the operational side of business, the business side in terms of probably HR, finance, would sit with them. It would not sit under the responsibility of the Chief Constable. So that's still not quite fully resolved in terms of who has responsibility. So in some ways, the staff will be allocated to the different structures. But the idea is that they will work together, but you can appreciate that was and it continues to be just the detail that makes it hugely challenging. So you could effectively have part of the business who is accountable and line managed to the Scottish Police Authority, whereas traditionally it was all under the responsibility of the Chief Constable.
Councillor Syme.
Thanks, Chair. I was just thinking about a year ago, we were sitting here with an awful lot of work in front of us, and it's nice to see it here. Now all more or less done and dusted. Just a couple of things. I was quite critical at the time. There was a bit of disappointment at the amount of partners coming to the meetings for the Pathfinder, and I hope that within the new structures we can find a way of getting more of them involved, because I think there was major partners there that weren't getting involved, and I think that's one for the future. I think it's really important that they do get involved with anything that's going on in the future, and it's how we do that. Second thing, a little bit of a laddie question, but in the last committee structure, we had quite a few subcommittees. We had complaints against the police, we had a review body and different things. Where does that go now, and where is it at the minute? You know, who deals with these things just now, and is it our decision for the future where they go? Are they dealt with centrally? Because I think it was handy that a lot of these subcommittees, we were dealing with things locally.
There is a new structure to deal with what would be traditionally police discipline and professional standards, which comes under Deputy Chief Constable Neil Richardson. It's almost like a two-tier approach now. Whilst they retain oversight of all complaints in Scotland, realistically, a lot of them that are local complaints, maybe by the public or lower level misconduct by our officers, the divisional commander has responsibility to manage them, but obviously make sure that DCC Richardson's team are made aware of it. So there will be certain amount of complaints that I will absolutely be privy to and have a responsibility to report on. And we do need to decide if it's in this meeting that we can just give some of those figures. I know there's subcommittees, but we're probably not that far advanced to know what that would actually start to look like. And actually, I would have to defer to DCC Richardson for guidance, because they will want consistency across the 14 divisions in Scotland to make sure that everybody is applying the same level of scrutiny at this board. The higher level of complaints and discipline issues, whilst I will be cited on them unless there's good reason not to, and the only reason I can think would be because I'm the subject of them until I need to know about them, is they will be managed from a distance, quite rightly, to maintain the integrity of that investigation. So where it is my officers and they've committed serious cases, serious offences, serious misconduct offences, I will be cited, I will be involved in that process, but I will not have probably investigators who report directly to me. They will direct up a chain to make sure that there is a level of independence and scrutiny from out with. So once we see how that works, and certainly from this meeting, I'm more than happy to go back and have a conversation with my professional standards colleagues to say, what kind of information can we feed in? And it might just be bland information, because I know there's a huge sensitivity about professional standards, or certainly the complaints, and how we did it in Dumfries and Galloway was not replicated across some of the other areas. So we'll have to get to consistency, and unfortunately for us, I'm not picking up a sense that that will immediately come up to the good practice that we had here. I think there'll be an interim position in the short term, but obviously working to that, hopefully a goal of having that kind of robust scrutiny at that level. But to be honest, it is DCC Richardson's responsibility, and therefore I would not be able to commit to that without making sure there was absolute clearance and guidance from himself.
Thank you. Do you want to come back there, Councillor?
It's on my list. There's a piece of work that we are just tidying up, and I spoke to Mr. Crichton just yesterday about it. You'll appreciate that with the change of structure within policing, we have had to take a long hard look at some of the partnerships that we attend and have previously led on at quite a high level. And the main reason for looking at that, not least of all because Mr. Shearer and Mr. McCormick are no longer in Dumfries and Galloway in the division, is the need to have proper governance and scrutiny within even my own service. So I shouldn't be going to a meeting where I'm asking one of my superintendents, or worse still, one of my chief inspectors to scrutinise my performance, because you can imagine how challenging that might be and how difficult their life might be at a future date. Certainly their career will potentially have stopped as well. So it is about making sure that we've got a proper governance structure within the police and seeing how that fits in with the partnerships without diminishing the impact and the influence the police have on those as a partner in the partnerships. In terms of this meeting, I think there's a piece of work that we have already started just talking about, which is we have community safety partnership, but we have this group as well. And some of the things I'm going to be talking about are so interlinked with some of the key priorities for that general community safety that we just have to make sure that it's not duplication of work, that it's pulling it together. And for me, some of the issues and some of the performance figures that I'll be giving out to you in terms of domestic violence, about violent crime, about alcohol and drug issues, it's absolutely right that our partners should be with us as well, because it's not just about, you're quite right, you should quite rightly challenge me about what am I doing about it, but some of these issues are so integrated with other social and healthcare issues that actually our partners should be sitting here too. So the plan is to probably try and set the scene, get some of your views here, but actually for me to then go away and depending on what those performance figures look like, and I think I said all during the Pathfinder, I would view as looking at exception reporting. And where we have either exceptionally good performance and results, that shouldn't solely sit that I look like I'm Miss Perfect and I'm able to solve the ills of the world. There'll be a huge partnership team behind it, and I think they should quite rightly be here. Equally, where there is exception reporting because we are not making Dumfries and Galloway as safe as we would want to, and we are not living up to the expectations you have, they should be sitting there as well to say what else can be done. So we would have all that. So that's kind of how it's starting to progress, but we need to make sure we've got the right people in place. And to be honest, the starting place is making sure the governance and the chairs of all the partnerships groups that have now lost their police chair, we have to make sure we get those filled at the right level.
Councillor Ogilvie.
I was going to raise it at the end, but since it's come up, it's about the community safety partnership, the governance arrangements and things. Now, it meets next week in DG1, and I'm not sure who's on it and what the agenda is, but if you look at your police plan, all your priorities are equally shared by this group. Now, in governance terms, you know, and you mentioned the word duplication, that was going to be my question, and I think you've partly answered that. I don't know who from the council sits on that now. Maybe Derek can answer, I'm not sure. But we have to have some sort of representation, taking on John's point about partnerships. Now, I used to sit on it way back when I was the chair of the Police and Fire Authority. And to be honest, the only folk it ever delivered, all the actions were on the police or the fire service. You know, everybody, that's a great idea, you pick it up. So Kate makes the point that she can't now maybe do that because of the way that the thing's been restructured. So it'd be interesting to get a report back because, you know, if it's acted out there on our behalf, we're the elected people, you know, supposedly, there has to be some, I don't know, way of keeping an eye on that. So we're all lined up, we're not duplicating, we understand what each other's doing, what we're trying to achieve. And at the moment, it's not clear for me. I know we're going through change, and it might become more apparent as we go on, but there's quite a lot of stuff in here, and every single one refers to the community safety partnership. So the question is, you've partly answered it, but I'd like to know who the council elected members are on the partnership.
Thanks, Chairman. Don't have the names in front of me, but I can provide them at the end of the meeting. But just to confirm, the members would have been put on by the first meeting of the full council, and I'm also happy to defer to any members who may have the answer.
Name two.
Name two.
Well, can I just come in? I received an email just advising that since 1st of April, those who had been on the Community Safety Partnership before the transition to single services would have to effectively be replaced on that committee. So I'm not sure if that's an email that's common to all members at the moment, but I certainly am not sure yet of my position on it, but I think that's maybe for an issue we can follow up with this meeting.
Thanks, Chair. Well, if it's going to meet next week at DG1, I think you have to be quite quick about it.
Yeah, as I say, I received that email today, so I'm in the process of sorting that out, Councillor Ogilvie. Councillor Blake.
Sorry, just about that. The email, you only received it today. Well, it's possible I've received it as well. As chair of the Community Safety Partnership, I thought it would be appropriate that it's kept involved.
Points well made. Kate Thompson's indicated positive meeting yesterday, and we'll build on that with fire and rescue as well. But the key point is, yes, the Community Safety Partnership is meeting tomorrow, and certainly it would be more than appropriate to ensure that for the next meeting of this subcommittee that we get a report on the progress with the Community Safety Partnership. We'll arrange that for the agenda. Happy to do so, and in more specific and immediate terms, what we'll also do is just establish clarity around the council representation. Do that as a matter of urgency following today's meeting.
Excellent, thank you. Now, just before I invite Neville to speak, is there anything else you'd like to add just in terms of the initiatives that have maybe been changing since the National Force kicked in?
Yeah, just a few things. I would imagine we'll have much more detailed discussions about performance, but I thought it was useful after 2 months of Police Scotland that I could give you a kind of very rough position statement without a whole lot of facts and figures, which will come next time. I'm sure you've all read in the papers that it's actually been a pretty torrid 2 months. I would have to say we have seen more violent crime than we saw in the latter end of last year. We've got a domestic-related attempted murder in the Stewartry, a suspicious death at Stranraer, recovery of suspected human tissue at Kirkpatrick Fleming, and let's not talk about that anymore. Murder of a local man in Dumfries and a significant drug recovery from a property in Newby, as well as other serious incidents down at Newby. One of the concerns that we had in the Pathfinder was the thought that when we moved to Police Scotland, we would lose resources from this area and it would all get drawn up into the central belt where the bulk of the crimes and incidents are. If I can reassure you that that has not actually been the case, and in fact, we have benefited from a huge input to almost all of those. I would rather not have all those people there because then I would have had no incidents. But we have received the benefit of having major investigation teams down to the murder to support our local officers, which meant I still had officers on the street doing general police patrol, which is what we would want. We've had them down for at least 3 or 4 times. I'm sure you've all heard that we've had horses down at Stranraer and Dumfries, which have been very productive. And all I would advise you to do is, if you stop to have a closer look at them, please make sure you're wearing your seatbelt and you haven't got your phone at your ear, because quite a few people got caught with tickets as they looked to admire the horses, and it turns out they weren't wearing their seatbelt as they were driving their car. We've had support unit officers in vans who have assisted us with house searches, who've done visible patrols. We've had dog handlers down, we've had motorcyclists, we have had the use of the helicopter in terms of coming down and taking some aerial photographs of key sites for ourselves, so that when we brief, and you can imagine when you're bringing a whole lot of officers down to an area they've never policed before, it is hugely challenging, not least of all till they get their head round the logistics of travelling from one end of the force area to another. Mr Foster, you'll not be surprised to hear that somebody at Kilmarnock said they were just going to nip down to Stranraer till they realised it's the biggest nip they've ever had. So it's to give them a real sense of when they get there what it looks like. So we've definitely benefited from having that access to a resource. We did have it before, but you had to make bids for it. It had to follow certain criteria. It's happened really quickly, and I would have to say, as your divisional commander, it has been a huge relief to be able to call on that level of resource, so that we didn't have to pull resource from all the other areas of Dumfries and Galloway to actually deal with an incident. So I'm hugely grateful, and probably just trying to reassure you that that resource is being used, we can access it, and we have actually got the benefit of it, of being able to very quickly respond to incidents and deal with them. They don't do it in isolation. They don't come down there and do it for us. They do it with us and actually link in with the local officers who are on the ground as well. And you would obviously see the SDL march or SDL demonstration as well. We had the use of the public order teams who were very low-key but very, very experienced on the White Sands. And whilst there were people arrested, it was actually contained and controlled very well, because ultimately this is about the safety of the individuals demonstrating and also the individuals in Dumfries at the time. In terms of other crimes, you'll not be surprised to know my violent crime has risen by 9 crimes. I could just about tell you what ones they were. However, they have all been detected. So we have got a 100% detection rate in those areas. We've also seen a rise in what we would call common assaults, so not serious assaults, but the more general ones. And we see this very much as a drive as we promote and continue to promote our challenge to those who would be violent towards their partners, as we are being much more progressive in terms of dealing with them, because it is unacceptable. So we have seen a rise in common assaults as well, but along with that goes a detection rate that is very positive as well. Dishonesty crimes, we have recorded an additional 50 crimes in comparison to the same period last year. And what we're seeing is a growing number of those acquisition crime offences, and it is one of the areas in the police plan that I have said that we will tackle. We have had a lot of detections in those areas as well, and we are going to make sure that we've got visible policing, that we give good crime prevention advice to people, and that's why you'll see quite a lot of that going across the local papers to just remind people to lock up. Please lock up your stuff, because there are people there who are trying to break in, and what they're looking for are items which they can quickly sell, make the money for other means. And I think as people's budgets get tighter and tighter, that is an area that they will start to look at more readily, unfortunately. Vandalism, whilst we've seen a decrease generally in the 3-year average, we've seen an increase of 29 offences. If I tell you 15 of those were the other night, where 15 people got their tyres slashed, it's not great, but we have an offender who will be appearing in court. So they successfully located someone with the help of the public, I'd have to say. So again, hugely grateful for the early heads up from members of the public at early hours of the morning, who actually saw something suspicious and reported it in. Road safety, we have seen a rise of 6 killed or seriously injured, and what you would not be surprised to, or maybe were surprised that I didn't cover that in the number of incidents. In amongst all the murder, attempt murders, the drug-related deaths that we had 2 of those. We also had 2 fatalities, one on the A75, just at shy of Crockett Ford, at the Shawhead Road End, and one on the A74, which was 2 more than we had for the same period last year. We've also had a number of serious accidents that actually, by the grace of someone, didn't end up being fatalities, because they were significant accidents on the A74 as well. There is a lot of visibility, as I'm sure you pointed out earlier, Councillor, sorry, but a lot of that is about visible patrolling, because we're just trying to prevent these dreadful accidents. And when you've got the A74 closed for 7 hours, I would suggest that's pretty unacceptable for the rest of the travelling public, because there's not an automatic alternative route for some of the heavy vehicles either. And the A75, we're not even going to go there, because that's even more challenging. What we have seen is in Wigton, Nithsdale, and Annandale and Eskdale, there has been an increase in the number of collisions. It's Wigton and Annandale and Eskdale, so the 2 extremes, that have seen the greatest increase to injury accidents. So they're where they're most serious. So that's where the visible policing is targeting at the moment. The only other point I'd want to bring up is, and I will relentlessly talk about it, is the 101 number that we talked about, and saying that was the first quick fix. Dumfries and Galloway, we are now showing 40% of our calls come in on 101, which is great, as opposed to using the old one. And it's just a case of we really need to keep promoting that 101 service to make sure that the public get the access and they're diverted where they need to be. But that's a significant rise from the first week of the new service. They've certainly grasped that. And by week 10, sorry, it started 2 weeks early. By week 10, we're sitting just shy of 40%, which I think is pretty good in comparison to other legacy forces who are experiencing that changeover as well.
Thank you. That's quite an extensive summary there. Councillor Syme.
Actually, there was just a couple of things I wanted to ask. Getting the 101 non-emergency number was one of them. I think it's great. I've used it a few times and really impressed with it. I actually used it by mistake when I was away on holiday and I got West Yorkshire Police. But it is trying to get people to use it. I don't know how we promote it. More word of mouth's been the sort of best thing. Don't be frightened to use it, sort of thing. Unfortunately, I don't know what the other elected members are like, but most people still tend to phone me and get me to phone the police. And it'd be quite good to sort of promote the number so that they're not doing that, because they're still frightened that they're going to get asked questions and the police cars got to come directly to their doors while the guilty party's still knocking about, seeing the police coming. But I do think it's a great thing and it's a good move. The only other thing was, Kate, you never mentioned it, and I've really been concerned about this for quite some time, is internet safety. Have you got any figures in that? Have you had? Is it still been quite a big issue? I get people for other local authorities phoning me at times because they don't know where to go with this because of my past as a trainer for foster carers, and there's still a lot of big issues there with internet safety. Have we got anything sort of on hand? And I know that we had a seminar a couple of years ago that came, and the local police did some work at the schools and whatever. But I'm still quite concerned about how this is escalating.
I think that's an area I would take away from this meeting, because that absolutely meets the requirement about having partners here, because that comes into that getting it right for every child, but the wider community safety context as well. And I know it's built into the curriculum for excellence in education. So I'm quite happy, Councillor Syme, to take that away and work out how we maybe do a session on that when we're talking about some of the Group 2 kind of, crimes or the public protection side of business. At the next one, to give you a bit of reassurance. But having looked at, for instance, Castle Douglas High School website that I was looking at for some other information the other day, they have got a large piece of information in about exactly that, internet security, what they need to do, what they need to check as parents. So it goes on the children's access website and also the parents. And I know that's replicated through the schools as they use it. It's the same pitch that they give, and it's the same bit of advice that's regularly updated. On a more national level, you'll have seen on the news this huge drive through the child exploitation teams down south, but equally there are groups, and Police Scotland's linked into those national groups here in Scotland that are looking at internet safety, the exploitation of children, and we are definitely trying to get ahead of it, but you can appreciate it's understanding the scale of it and then tackling it from both ends, dealing with the high end, but also trying to educate. It's actually as challenging educating parents to understand internet capability as it is. The children know how to get it, and with everybody having smartphones now and iPads and goodness knows all what, access to it's really easy. So we're trying to promote it both ways, but I can certainly bring it back in a little bit more detail and do a little bit more focused work next time.
Okay, can I just say, Chair, I completely agree that I think we're targeting it to the kids, but these seminars and training should be to the parents, because a lot of them don't understand how vulnerable the kids are. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Peacock.
Thank you, Chair. Just with reference to the increase in incidents that we've had, it seems that from the 1st of April, Dumfries and Galloway just seemed to go wild, as if there was no existing police force after that date for some reason. And I agree with the increase in as much in Annandale and Eskdale. I was quite surprised at the amount of incidents that we had there, and I'm quite sure that at that time, because of the changeover, Kate is quite pleased that she wasn't in charge of the budget for all these incidents. Just a couple of quick points on that. As Kate mentioned, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit, when you bring in the other services that are available to you, the other officers coming down, you said they work in partnership and along with you rather than come in and take over. Does that mean that it depends on the incident involved, of course, but you will have a senior commander for that particular incident, and they work under him, or whether it's through yourself, because I know you'll not be available for every incident, but it will come under your jurisdiction as such, and they will come and liaise with you and work with you, and I'm quite pleased that you're saying that they do work in partnership rather than come in and try and take over, because it is important, as you say, with local knowledge and things like that they work together. So that's quite good, but if you could maybe just elaborate a bit on that. And otherwise, going back to the 101 number as well, I agree it's a good number. The promotion of it, I would like to see increased as well, because at all community councils I visit, every time I'm there, I keep reiterating the 101 number to them. But an occurrence last night in one of my community councils, because we have problems with some travellers up in Ecclefechan at the moment, and there's constant phone calls coming in with reference to these. And I don't know if it's available, or if there's a small leaflet or poster identifying that number that could be sent out to all the communities, so they can put it in the community notice boards and things like that, so people that are just in the day-to-day business, if they have an issue, and it's there in public for them to see and to grasp, that might be helpful.
great idea. I'll go and check. The simple answer is I'm not quite sure, but I would imagine there should be or there will be. So I will get that fixed up and come back through council services to get that circulated as soon as we have, just with some guidance. So good idea. The second one, your point was where and the simple one, probably one of the most serious incidents you will get that is not doesn't require specialist command. I'll give you the two examples where it's slightly different. The murder in Dumfries, the responsibility for investigating the murder lies with the major investigation team, senior investigating officer, and he reports to the his line management, which sits out with the division. But a critical part of that is they must liaise with the divisional commander, because I effectively give them all the other services that they need. So they will report to me, as they did every day, that I'm available, and they will ask for resource if they need anything else, but they will give me an update, and it worked really, really well. The SIO, you know, I sat in on a lot of the briefings so I could see what was going on, probably because I was a little bit anxious because I wasn't quite sure how it would feel. But to be honest, I then just sat in at the debriefs at the end of the day, because you could see that it was working really well. They became part of a collective team, and it was just like any other investigation in Dumfries and Galloway. But they have a responsibility, because I am accountable to you for that crime in this area. So therefore my responsibility very much is to make sure that that is carried out properly. So it works well. That yes, they do have other lines of specialist reporting, but the person they have to make sure is cited on everything that's going on is the divisional commander, because of those wider community impact issues that come out of such cases. The SDL march is slightly different. Whilst I had a role as one of the commanders, it was overseen by a chief superintendent who has accreditation as a public order commander, which I don't have at the moment, because I'm going to have to go through that because I think it'll be easier down here if we have such an incident to be able to command incidents. And because I don't hold that accreditation, we had to ask for somebody to have that strategic command oversight in terms of, now he carried everything over. I was the local policing tactical commander, so everything that was not specialist was in my area of responsibility. So all the officers from Dumfries and Galloway, or any support that were not specialists, came under my command. And then there was an equivalent who sat across from me who was purely public order. He sorted out all his teams who had public order skills that I couldn't command. Now, we all sat in the same event room, and we managed that collectively between us, and it worked really well because the situation constantly evolved, and therefore we started to take on responsibilities that initially the plan had said they would do, just because they were quite stretched in terms of making sure they provided the proper cover with the specialisms that they had. So every case on its own merits, but it does actually work, and it doesn't feel that uncomfortable. And I can honestly say, as divisional commander, I never felt I wasn't in control or had a say on what was happening in Dumfries and Galloway, because my big concern is it's all very well coming down and taking a course of action, then leaving, because you don't have to live here, you don't have to police here. But my experience in the last 2 months is that has never been the case. It has always worked really well, and there has always been really, really good engagement with them. That has meant that, to all intents and purposes, you wouldn't know if they'd been Dumfries and Galloway officers or not. So it's worked really well, and it's been really quite positive, which is good from my point of view.
Thank you, Kate. Now, just in a similar vein, Neville, I don't know if there's, you might not have an extensive sort of summary to give, but is there anything that you'd like to add, just with a view to how, since the winding down of Pathfinder and the implementation of reforms sort of brought any sort of significant changes to your own operation?
Yes, certainly. I can talk at half an hour as well if you want me to, but no, just to go back to the first question, I think it was about the staff movement across into the new organisation. We did transfer the 18 cleaners across quite successfully, and we've given them a line manager so they know who they're reporting to and they talk to them regularly, and any issues that have arisen have been dealt with quite quickly and successfully. The other issues around about staff movements, we're still sitting in this sort of shadow year, as they call it, for the Fire and Rescue Service, where they have put the LSOs, myself and people like me, in position to carry on business as usual, as they call it. But they've also put the strategic leadership team in place, and it's only now they're starting to fill that gap in between that level and this level, and they haven't started filling in below my level yet with actual people who've got definite roles and responsibilities. They've got the current roles and responsibilities they had in the previous organisation, where I've got somebody in charge of Wickenshire and Shrewsbury and somebody in charge of Nithsdale and Annandale in the two offices I've got currently. They are still in that post. That's not to say that the final structure in 3 years' time isn't different from that. It's how we actually get from that point to that point. And to be honest, that's where the stress and the strain is actually being felt by some of the officers in the organisation and some of the support staff members. I've got the staff I've got, but some of them staff are starting to move out of my command and control into a directorates. For example, the people and organisation development, or the HR role, as it was before, Sharon Scott has now been appointed as the West HR business partner. So instead of being under my remit, as would have been before, it's more of a business partner relationship. I've got a finance business partner now that sits in Strathclyde. I don't have somebody in finance sitting in Dumfries and Galloway. So it's these kind of things. People are taking over roles as they are being matched into them, but they are actually being matched into somebody else's budget and somebody else's directorate. Which, when it comes down to the operational point of view, starts giving me one or two little issues that I'm going to have to sort of work through, and that is the approach between being a multi-capable officer who can look after community safety, fire safety, operations for, say, Wickenshire, to being directorial-led, where you've got a dedicated fire enforcement officer or a dedicated community safety officer or a dedicated operations officer who work under a different line of command through a directorate. We've got people, there's a whole fire safety enforcement and community safety engagement directorate that has a head that has somebody in Dumfries and Galloway that sits in line commands that direction. And I don't, it's more of a partnership relationship I've got with them rather than actually I'm in charge of all that kind of area. Even though our plan looks like it's my plan to look after what your needs are, it is, but how I get the resources is by through partnership working with other directorates in the organisation. So there are some of the sort of changes I've seen already happening. But currently it's business as usual. I've got people in place. They may have their titles under other people's areas, but I've still got that buy-in from them to work for the local area. So the other thing that hasn't come about yet is the, as Kate alluded to, is the voluntary redundancy and the voluntary retirement packages. We hoped they were going to be up at the board meeting in June, but that's been deferred. They're still looking into the ins and outs of that a bit further along with Scottish Government, because there's a number of people in the organisation that do want to actually either take the opportunity to retire early or move on. Because where we came from, we weren't able to provide that opportunity prior to the changeover on the 1st of April, which a lot of the services in Scotland were able to do that. So a lot of people in the other areas have already left through that route. And surprisingly, actually, a lot more people left through that route than they'd expected originally. And it's left some areas in Scotland that don't have the same kind. I'm probably, as somebody said, awash with support staff currently, as opposed to other areas. There's the area managers answering their own phones and opening their own letters because they haven't got a secretary anymore because that secretary decided to take that opportunity. So I'm pretty fortunate in my own area. As I said, it's a shadow year. We're going to work through how we get there. And the plan that's been approved by this committee in the past, it's an interim plan. And on that same vein, we the strategic plan for Scotland as in draft form, and await Scottish Government at the moment, and hopefully around about July time, it should be out for consultation locally, and that's the 3-year strategic plan for Scotland. And from that, then it'll be this group or whatever group looks at in the future is how we actually develop that 3-year local plan. And that'll start probably around about the August, September point. So we've got something going in for a 3-year plan starting April next year. So we've got a fair bit of lead-in time. Picking up one or two other things locally, we've got my report from the last quarter, but we'll talk about that when it comes on the agenda. But locally, we've also seen a slight rise in things like chimney fires, house fires, and again, Annandale, for whatever reason. And the reasons we seem to think is it is actually people, austerity measures that hadn't kicked in originally are starting to kick in now, where a lot of the investigation is deeming that people are opening up old chimneys and putting log burners in without the proper flue linings because it's actually the cheap way of heating the houses. And we've had this extended period of cold that's actually made it probably that austerity and also the build on the climate to increase our sort of fires of that nature. We've also had a few more fires and things that we didn't quite expect, and without going into the judiciary, but there's a few more investigations going on about, why was the cause of that fire? Is it because businesses are starting to go to the wall and there's insurance claims and things like that? So that there's more investigation on that. And the investigation side has changed slightly as well. We've got a national investigation team that sits in the north, east and west areas, rather than before we'd do a lot of the investigation ourselves with local officers. When it becomes a crime now, it's working with the SPA, the policing services, the Royal Sockles. Yeah. SPA, working with SPA and actually directing our resources and their resources together to actually sort of get to the bottom of that. And as I say, before it was locally, we used to do that kind of investigation, but that's done at a higher level. So we're getting more specialist resources, as Kate has said from her side of it, we're getting specialist resources coming at a different level as well. And without rabbiting on, I think that's really where we are with the movement of the new organisation. You are going to get the same sort of response currently from the frontline firefighting position that you've always had. The slight difference from myself to Kate's responsibility is that the borders being broken down between Dumfries and Galloway and the rest of the Fire and Rescue Service means that our officers aren't actually dedicated just in Dumfries and Galloway. When an incident happens, it could be that I'm the only officer on in the whole of the West area. So I could end up in Lanark or Glasgow City Centre if something happens because of the actual the command structure that they've put in place. In Dumfries and Galloway, they've got 2 local response areas, which means that we've got always somebody on in the east and always somebody on in the west. Then we have a level above that, which is always on somebody on from Dumfries and Galloway. And that's at the level above that, which means we've always got somebody on in the west area of Scotland. So from having Dumfries and Galloway as my main remit, that at night I could end up anywhere. So that's how things have changed for me. Thank you.
Any questions, Councillor Stein?
It's just what Neville was saying there, to finish up, and Kate as well. I know that before there was a sort of relationship between ourselves and south of the border regarding major incidents. Has that, and I know it was like a wee bit give and take when it came to these incidents, is that relationship still the same? Because Kate's saying now that she gets help for Strathclyde and that. Has that changed the relationship with the likes of Cumbria and south of the border?
No, Section 2 cross-border support will still always be there because that's part of the actual the national approach to dealing with incidents. We certainly probably find that our appliances go south of the border more than the appliances come north of the border. From a national resilience point of view, and it's probably from some of the specialist equipment, then there's a national strategic plan there where that if something massive happens up in Scotland, then we still are at the moment a strategic staging area for Glasgow, Aberdeen, Edinburgh, if it's something like urban search and rescue vehicles, or it's hazmat equipment, things like that, or a number of extra appliances required, they still stage that response from Dumfries and Galloway and then move up in convoy up the road from this area. So the answer is yes. Then things haven't changed, and I don't expect them to change either.
Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, it's just something that Neville said that kind of raised a wee alarm bell in my head here. He said that if they've got a file that needs investigation to deal with the SPA, have we got a two-tier police system here? Is the SPA investigating things as opposed to Police Scotland? Or did Neville?
No, it's what was the SPSA, which is dealt with all the forensic gathering. The scenes of crime officers who used to be parts of forces moved across to be within that specialist group quite a few years ago. So they've moved across to, they're part of the SPA. So they were never part of the respective police services or police forces, should I say. So we're not, it's just they've got a different line management, but actually that's been the case for some time, so it just works the same way it's always done.
Well, that's been quite illuminating, I think, overall, and slightly off the actual recommendations. Yeah, so it might be a help if maybe Derek could give us a summary, a sum up of the report as report author.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, spirit, I think, of the meeting, I'm happy through you, Chair, and then ultimately Claire, from governance perspective, I think you've noted the progress in concluding the project, and you'll agree that the finalised details of the project completion will be reported, we'll say it to this subcommittee. Clearly that may change in terms of where it goes, but I think for simplicity it will be coming to this subcommittee. And I think the additional point that I think you've drawn out is that you've recognised the progress with the governance, performance and partnerships work stream, including specifically the updates from the local officers and the need for the work of the local community safety partnership to be the subject of a report to a future, indeed next meeting of this subcommittee.
I've got a note of all that. Derek's basically just said everything else.
Are we happy to agree with that then in terms of the recommendations for number 5? With that then, if we move on to item number 6, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Quarterly Performance Report, January to March 2013. I'll hand over to Neville to speak to this report.
This is the similar type report that you've had in the past. It finalises the last quarter of the previous administration, showing that, to be honest, performances in all areas were still improving all the time, and the performance indicators showing 13 indicators that have exceeded this target. It's 1 indicator that's within 10%. And to be honest, we keep looking at that indicator on calls handled in 2 minutes. And when you look at the different calls that take over that, it can be difficult type calls to find out what is the information that the control have to get from that person that's calling to ensure that we put the right response to that incident. And if you accept that the fact is that if we're 86% there, then 14% will be over because that call could be a lot longer to try and get the exact detail, location, what it involves, so we actually put the right response in. So we're quite happy with that. We're having to look at our target to see if that's a realistic target to actually achieve, or it's a target that should be actually reduced. So it shows that that's where it does sit. Going on the only other target, I think that for notifications really is looking on the one on the 6 indicators where we talk about sickness and light duties and things like that. And the positive indicator that is it is a positive indicator to me, the one that's in red, is because we're bringing people back to work and doing some meaningful work quicker than we had in the past. So the actual number of people that are on sickness is going down. The number of people that are on modified duties or light duties is going up. So they're actually coming back in the organisation and doing something beneficial. So what looks like a negative indicator is a positive indicator. This report is really going to be the last of of last year's. And what will come next to the next meeting, which is already in draft form, is the public performance report for the annual public performance report. It takes all the 4 reports from over the year together and gives you probably what I would suggest is a benchmarking standard for how Dumfries and Galloway finished off as the previous service. And I'm not putting words in your mouth, but there are suggestions, but I'd keep that report and have a look and see how we perform in the future and use it as a benchmarking standard.
Thank you. Are there any questions to Neville? Councillor Syme?
I appreciate, Neville, that most of the calls to the fire service are 999 and emergency numbers. Would the sort of 101 non-emergency number help use at all, or would you go down that route? How do you think about that?
To be honest, the 999 number, I would say 99% of them are emergency calls. We do get a lot of administrative calls. We do have an administrative line that picks it up, and that's still the old 252222, which is quite a simple number to remember in most places. It's also the one that's also advertised within the local newspapers every week. So they've got that other non-emergency number. It's not a simple number as a 101, I understand that. I'm not sure there's actually a direction of travel nationally to go into something like that. We have got an 0800 number that we are using currently with our partners for referrals for home fire safety checks, etc., which has already been rolled out. I think it's amongst 10 different partner organisations. People, for example, if social services are in people's houses and they realise when they're there that there's some fire-related issues, then they've got a simple 0800 number where they can actually report that for us to go and help. So we've got a couple of numbers there, but nationally I'm not sure they're going to go down the lines of 101.
Councillor Ogilvie?
Yeah, just Neville said that this would be the last time we see this sort of report. Do you mean the fireworks thing, or do you mean general report? Because the area committees are going to take a key role in looking at locality stuff, and these sort of documents are great. I mean, the issue you've raised about the chimney fires, I raised with the guy's just retired, he's in here somewhere, Neil Erskine. It was too early to tell if it was, and you've said it, it's because folk are putting in stuff that can burn, you know, wood burners. And that's because it's quite a leap. Well, not a leap. So the question was really, will we still get fireworks at local level?
My intention is, and I've talked to the fireworks one you've got in front of you, if you've got the actually nice glossy one, that's done by the graphics department in Glasgow. They've revamped it for me. The answer, the short-term answer is, my intention is yes. The national approach to it is they are looking at a standard template that we run out across the whole of Scotland to give you the statistics. My feeling is that the statistics only give you one part of the story. What you also need in there is the local incidents that sit and back that up. So my intention is yes, as long as I've got control of the budget for the publishing of this, I will be publishing fireworks.
National statistics is one thing, but to localise it so it's meaningful. I mean, there's some really good pictures in this one, actually. If you turn to page, whatever it is. There it is. Well, doesn't have John? Yes, but no, seriously, we talked about this at length when we knew it, when Hamish was here, about what format. And this got thumbs up for everybody because it's easy to read, both across the region and your own particular area. And if we can keep it going, it'd be great. I wish somebody had told the lassies, because the lassies have got these, and we've got colours in our papers. Something maybe Derek could take on board, save us a lot of, because you get black and white and you get coloured things separately, but this is excellent. It's all in one document.
I was just wondering, would you like to maybe add something to that in terms of how data will be presented in the future?
It just picks up on exactly the point you've made about what figures will come. You'll appreciate I don't have a performance team sitting here that can actually unpick some of the specific areas. I get figures across Dumfries and Galloway that's split into 3 areas. Galloway, so the Stuart and Wigtonshire together, Annandale and Eskdale and Nithsdale together. I know there's a bit of ongoing work being done with the National Performance Management System up the road, that's looking at breaking it down into the multi-member wards, and that's a bit of ongoing work that will be then reported into the area committees. But obviously what will be reported to this group is the national stats, but it'll allow me to put a little bit of context in. What I do have today that I'm quite happy to hand out is the kind of framework that's been suggested, and you'll get an idea of some of the crimes and offences that will be reported, because these are deemed to be priorities for ourselves, but also meet the national requirements too. And you'll see after every one, it'll give you a comparison to the previous year, what the percentage change is, and then it'll allow me to input some context into that to give you a real sense of what's going on. But there'll be no surprises in it, and I would imagine what will happen is your area committee reports, all I would ask you to do is be patient while we get that performance data in the same kind of framework that's meaningful for you, but it will be very much laid out in the same way, so that what you're seeing at area committee in terms of format is the same as what you're seeing here, and that makes it easier, probably for me. I'll be selfish and say it'll be easier for me to then have one standardised format and you understand what's going to be presented. We can probably discuss, you know, the kind of nuances of what we would like in, but all I would say is I would ask you to be patient in the short term, because we are trying to adjust from a performance system that was solely Dumfries and Galloway, that information gets uplifted into a national one, and we're still just going through one or two teething difficulties with it, because what I want to be assured is the information that I bring to you is absolutely accurate and it's as current as it possibly can be. So you're getting real lifetime reporting.
Thank you. With that then, are we happy to go with the recommendation and note the report? Now, unfortunately, with the agreement of members, if we could defer the presentation from the Reform Improvement Service, because there's nobody here to actually give it. So if we're happy to do that, we can move on to item number 8, which is that I have no further business. And with that, the meeting is finished. Thank you.